You know that feeling when maybe a piece of art or even just a quick thought, it feels like it unlocks something,
Mm.
something deep in your mind.
Mm.
Like you get this glimpse of something profound, but then poof, it's gone.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's a very human thing, that sort of brush with
Yeah.
deeper understanding.
Right.
It really speaks to our, curiosity,
Hmm.
our need to find meaning.
Well, that's exactly the kind of territory we're getting into today on the deep dive.
Okay.
You sent us a really fascinating mix of materials. There's this YouTube reflection piece, a PDF that's just packed with these intriguing quotes,
Mm,
and then details about the life of this artist, Bob Camblin.
right.
It's quite a diverse set of sources, isn't it? It really hints at how multifaceted Camblin himself must have been.
Absolutely. I mean, the variety in what you sent gives us a really rich foundation.
Hmm.
It helps us start to grasp his whole approach to art and his philosophies underneath it all.
So, our mission for this deep dive is to really try and get to the heart of Camblin's unique vision. We want to unpack how he saw art, how he read the world,
Hmm.
maybe even catch a bit of his own journey towards what one source called everyday enlightenment,
That's a great phrase.
isn't it? So, ultimately, we want to give you, the listener, a much richer feel for his work and the ideas it stirs up.
And we'll navigate this together, obviously. Try and draw the lines between these different pieces, build up a clearer picture.
Great. So let's start with that YouTube video, A Blot of Memory.
Okay.
It's got this anonymous artist looking at an ink blot, reminds them of Renzo Vespignani.
Mhm.
What struck me right away was how this simple, almost random seeming image, it just sparked these huge reflections on life, on art.
Well, what's interesting there right off the bat is how that ambiguity, that ink blot, it kind of mirrors a key idea in Campbell's own work, doesn't it?
How so?
Critics often said his art wasn't about making statements. It was more about um, asking questions,
Hmm.
presenting these visual paradoxes, almost like blueprints for ideas.
Yeah, okay.
That ink blot, just by being so open to interpretation, it sort of embodies that whole spirit of inquiry.
And the video talks about impermanence, life as smudges on the canvas of time, but still finding meaning in each mark.
Yeah.
That felt very connected to what I read about Camblin's own varied work and this knack he seemed to have for finding beauty or meaning in really unexpected places, even in like decay or absurdity.
Exactly. If you think about Campbell's own path artistically, he went through so many styles, different media. He wasn't stuck on one mark or one way of doing things.
Right.
So that suggests a similar philosophy, maybe, embracing that things change, finding value in each different stage of exploring.
The video also drops in that Einstein quote, "Imagination is more important than knowledge."
Ah, yes.
That really jumped out at me thinking about Camblin's Mouches Volantes style, those dots and dashes that seem random but then create optical illusions.
Mm-hmm. It's like optical trickery almost.
It feels like he's deliberately making the viewer use their imagination to like finish the picture.
That's a really key point. So they're not just random marks at all. They're deliberate gaps, absences that make your mind work to fill them in,
Right.
which fits perfectly with this idea that meaning isn't just given to you, it's something you actively help create.
Then there's Socrates, "An unexamined life is not worth living." And the video artist talks about open-eyed curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
That feels so spot on for the kind of deep thinking Camblin's work seems to demand. You can't just, glance at it.
No, you really can't. It brings up this whole question of what role Camblin wanted the viewer to play. He doesn't give you easy answers, does he?
Not at all.
He gives you these visual puzzles that, well, they require that open-eyed curiosity just to even start figuring out what you're looking at, let alone what it might mean. It's like he sets up this active dialogue.
The video also brings in the Buddha talking about self-love and Wayne Dyer about how changing your perspective changes what you see.
Right.
It suggests that how we react to that ink blot or to Camblin's art is really personal. It reflects our own stuff, our own mindset.
Precisely. So Camblin's aim, it seems, if we connect these dots,
Mm.
it's about provoking that introspection, encouraging those shifts in how you see things.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty or the meaning, it isn't just in the artwork. It kind of arises from that interaction between the art and your own consciousness.
And then there's Seneca, that quote about not wasting our short time.
Ah.
Camblin's life itself, his teaching, then leaving it all to become a nomadic artist. That feels like a really conscious choice about how to spend his time, rejecting a more, conventional path.
That decision in '76 to go nomadic,
Mhm.
It really highlights a deep, deep commitment to his art, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Putting that creative freedom above, well, above maybe more normal career goals or what society expected.
And the Plato reference about true forms lying beyond our senses, that connects with Camlin exploring hidden meanings, right? This idea that art can point to truths beyond just the surface.
Yeah, what's fascinating there is how Camblin uses the physical, the visible art, as kind of signpost, pointing towards something intangible, something deeper,
Hmm.
conceptual, maybe?
Like Plato's idea of grasping abstract concepts through their imperfect reflections in the real world.
Exactly. The artwork is the reflection, pointing to the form.
The video ends with Einstein, again, life like riding a bicycle, gotta keep moving.
Yeah.
And the ink figure is leaning forward.
Mm,
It suggests this ongoing process, constant exploring, constant questioning. That feels very much like Camblin's whole artistic spirit.
I agree. His art never feels like a final answer, does it? It's
Mm.
more like an invitation to keep going, keep questioning, keep discovering. It's a journey the viewer takes alongside the art.
Okay, so let's dig even deeper now with this PDF. Bob Camblin quotes and other mysteries.
Right.
Wow, this is just, it's packed. These short, often poetic, sometimes pretty cryptic statements.
Definitely cryptic sometimes.
Let's start with that theme of impermanence and change. Quotes like, fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps.
Huh, yeah. That or another 10 years.
Or him talking about the cottonwood trees vanishing. And that really poignant one, Saltaire Summer 1967, about getting older, memory fading. These really echo what we were just saying about the Blot of Memory video.
What strikes me about these is how direct they are. Almost raw, acknowledging how fleeting everything is, how time just wears away even things we hold dear like memories.
Yeah.
That Saltaire Summer one especially, it captures that bittersweet feeling, doesn't it? Recognizing time passing and how it changes how we see the past.
And it's interesting how that connects so directly to critics who also saw impermanence as a major theme in his actual artwork.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just some abstract idea for him. It seems like it was a really personal thing that shaped how he created.
Totally. His art wasn't about trying to make these static, timeless things. It feels like there was this built-in understanding, maybe even acceptance of change, of decay, the transient nature of it all, just woven right into how he worked.
Okay, moving to his thoughts on art, philosophy, perception. These are fascinating. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both. And art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake. And then just step off the train of thought.
Yeah, that last one's powerful.
These really suggest art is way more than just something nice to look at.
These quotes really nail what seems to be Camblin's core belief. Right?
Yeah.
That is basically a form of inquiry, a way to explore the big questions about existence, just like philosophy or even science.
Comparing the atom and magic.
Yeah, that's so insightful, suggesting that both of them, even though they work differently, can lead you to deeper understanding.
And that need to step off the train of thought that really clicks with what reviews said about him deliberately trying to mess with linear thinking in his art. It's about getting beyond just logic, A to B thinking.
Precisely. His art often hits you with paradoxes, right? Unexpected combinations that almost force you to ditch those rigid, step-by-step thought patterns. You have to engage more intuitively, maybe even subconsciously.
He also keeps coming back to balance and paradox. He says, I will stick with common sense and try for the perfectly average view of the universe.
Which sounds almost mundane.
But then right after, he hopes for a bright gray where science and magic meet.
Right.
Then there's, in the balance, patience and yet, freedom again, and yet, in silence, the reality can be maintained. Beautiful phrasing.
He really is.
And the slightly sad one, balancing and being for and against, we miss the clouds. This embrace of opposites seems really central for him.
This embrace of paradox.
Yeah.
That's a really key thing in a lot of Eastern thought, isn't it? Like Zen, which we know he was interested in. It's about holding contradictory ideas together in tension and finding some deeper truth or understanding in that balance. That quote about missing the clouds. It suggests that sometimes if you get too tangled up in the for and against, you miss just seeing what's right there, the present moment.
And that fits so well with the foreword to that Zen book included in the sources. He talked about intuition, interconnectedness, how Camblin's work aimed to blend ancient wisdom with modern art.
Exactly. That foreword really underlines how Camblin's art was meant to be more than just visual. It was intended as a kind of doorway, a portal to a higher awareness, prompting that active thinking process we talked about.
Okay, let's look at the quotes about inner experience. Truth. He writes, I cannot tell a lie to myself for very long.
Hmm.
Find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. And the light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe.
Wow.
And the sixth sense is to be without a doubt senza dubio, no doubt. These feel really personal, introspective, like glimpses of his inner rules.
They really show this deep commitment to self-honesty, don't they? And how important inner experience was for him as a guide. That idea of finding something in nature to surrender to, it suggests connecting to something bigger than just yourself, merging with the natural world maybe,
Yeah.
and being, without a doubt, as a sixth sense. That speaks volumes about the power he probably saw in intuition, in just knowing, having conviction.
That really resonates with the book review saying his art spoke directly to the viewer's soul, needing self-inquiry. It wasn't about getting external approval or following rules.
Right.
It was about that inner feeling, that personal journey.
Exactly. Camblin's work feels like it's designed to bypass the purely logical mind,
Yeah.
connect with something deeper inside us, prompting that very personal internal search for meaning.
He also says some really interesting things about creativity, awareness, like when you think, don't act. When you act, don't think.
Okay, that's a classic Zen-like idea, isn't it?
Seems like it. And we all are creative, but we lose our magic in understanding everything instead of knowing. And then simply, zazen, the aimless mind, focuses itself. It really puts the emphasis on intuition, direct experience, not overthinking it.
These quotes really stress being fully present, don't they?
Yeah.
Letting intuition guide what you do rather than just conscious, analytical thought. That difference he makes between understanding and knowing, that's crucial.
Knowing feels deeper.
Yeah, a deeper, more lived kind of knowledge, beyond just grasping it intellectually.
Hmm.
And mentioning Zazen directly, that firmly links him to that Zen idea of finding focus through a mind that's free, clear of clutter and expectations.
Then there are his thoughts on communication, or maybe miscommunication. He writes, if you argue, or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate.
Interesting distinction.
And that little story about trying to change the world and ending up with 21 cents.
Yeah.
It suggests a pretty complex, maybe even a bit skeptical view of how well we actually connect through normal conversation.
These quotes really point to the limits of just talking, right? Suggesting that arguing or even agreeing can sometimes hide a real lack of understanding. That 21 cents story is sharp the gap between big plans and reality.
Yeah.
Maybe Camblin saw his art as a different way to communicate, something more subtle that could maybe get around the limits of just words and logic.
His observations of nature are also really beautiful. Lines like, the cosmos waves as me with tree leaves,
Lovely.
and not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze. Plus these little haiku-like snippets capturing moments. They connect so well with that Charlotte Moser quote about his exploring organic forms.
They really show this deep sensitivity to nature, don't they?
Yeah.
Almost a feeling of direct connection, which again lines up with Zen ideas. He's not just looking at nature, he seems to be feeling this direct, symbiotic link with it.
And finally, a few on his actual artistic process, his intentions. He says, there are no mistakes. You are doing the best you can, and mistakes are nature's way of telling you to trust your instincts.
That's freeing, isn't it?
Yeah. And don't let the demon of being right get in. Flow and think of what you are doing, not what you plan to do. Step off the train of thought. Again.
There it is again.
It really emphasizes trusting your gut, embracing so-called failures, being totally present when you're creating.
These quotes give us such a valuable peek into how Camblin approached making art. It wasn't about chasing perfection or sticking rigidly to a plan.
Right.
It was about embracing the process as it unfolded, trusting instincts, letting the work grow organically. That step off the train of thought idea just keeps reinforcing his belief in getting beyond conscious control in the act of creation.
And we definitely can't skip his quotes on mirrors and perception.
Yeah.
Mirrors are not magic. They just seem to be. Everyone is a mirror, and that is magic.
Right.
Laugh, laugh, laugh.
Love that.
And the more direct, fool the eye, fool the mind, these tie right back to the review saying the book is a mirror and his use of optical illusions, the muchas volantes.
These last ones really hammer home Camblin's fascination with how we see reality and the big role illusion plays in shaping how we understand things. The idea of everyone being a mirror, it suggests this deep interconnectedness, doesn't it? And the chance for self-reflection in all our interactions.
Yeah.
And fool the eye, fool the mind, that perfectly captures the playful but also really thought-provoking nature of his visual tricks.
Okay, let's shift now to the biography info. Get a clearer picture of the person behind all these ideas. Bob Camblin, born Oklahoma, 1928, formal art education, including that Fulbright to Italy. That must have been huge, right? Seeing the Uffizi, the Capuchin catacombs.
Yeah, that Fulbright seems like a really pivotal time for him. The biography mentions how fascinated he was by the abstract figures he saw, both at the Uffizi and the kind of macabre images in the catacombs. He called them almost like mummies.
Wow.
Images that stayed with him, clearly fed into his later work. And then that shift later to being nomadic, it just highlights his incredible commitment to his art, putting creative freedom first.
The bio also traces his artistic path, early abstract impressionism, then developing the mouche volante style later in the 80s.
Right.
And it really emphasizes his collaborative side, working with Earl Staley, Joe Tate, B&E Productions, those great show names like Tattoo Show, The Camping Show. Seems like he really thrived on that shared energy.
Those collaborations are really telling, aren't they?
Yeah.
The fact that he'd sometimes just sign things anonymous or anonymous artists.
Yeah.
It really points to wanting to kind of submerge his own ego, prioritize the group creation over getting personal credit, which fits with those philosophical quotes about stepping outside yourself.
The biography reinforces that his art was full of questions, paradoxes, hidden meanings, deliberately resisting easy answers. It also links him to Zen, the I Ching, existentialism, which we saw in the quotes in that foreword. And he worked in so many different materials, developed these recurring symbols, scarecrows, masks, jars of water. Each one feels loaded with meaning.
Those recurring motifs are like visual anchors in his work, aren't they? Each one packed with layers of potential meaning he seems to want us to unpack. The scarecrows, for example, inspired by Gunter Grass. They're not just farm things. They touch on renewal, transformation, being a silent witness,
Okay.
and the jars of water. People interpret that as turning obstacles, stumbling blocks into stepping stones, transforming things.
The bio also says he explicitly wanted to question reality itself, evoke the otherworldly, and had this huge ambition to remake Goya in 20th century terms.
That's quite a goal.
It lists lots of exhibitions, quotes from critics like Charlotte Mosier on his organic forms, Eleanor Freed on his focus on the life cycle.
Those critical takes help us place his work, understand how others saw it. Moser on organic forms connects right back to those nature quotes, right?
Yeah.
And Freed, seeing the life cycle theme, resonates with that constant thread of impermanence and metamorphosis in his thinking.
We also get some great personal stories in the bio. Pete Gershon calling him a mystical trickster figure. Love that description. And Earl Staley's account of their friendship, their collaborations. Staley saying Camblin actually taught him how to draw. It paints a picture of someone dynamic, influential, but also kind of elusive.
Staley's memories really bring him to life, don't they?
Yeah.
Those details about shared studios, the projects, Camblin eventually leaving teaching in Houston, it shows the impact he had. And Staley describing Camblin's later studio as a wizard's den, full of weird collected objects. That's so evocative.
And the fact he apparently owned a Mr. Peanut costume.
Right.
And sometimes sign things with that image or just anonymous. It just adds another layer to that mystical trickster thing, playfully messing with identity, with expectations.
That Mr. Peanut persona is just brilliant. It hints at this performance aspect to his art, his willingness to play with who an artist is supposed to be. It fits right in with the hidden meanings and twists in his work.
The bio notes his later moves, Oregon coast, then Louisiana, becoming more reclusive. And the efforts now to put together a show after his death seems he deliberately stepped back from the mainstream art scene later on.
That final withdrawal really underlines his fierce independence, doesn't it? Sticking to his own path, even if it meant pulling back from the conventional art world. It definitely adds to the mystery around his later work and his legacy.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, a few key themes just keep popping up from exploring Bob Camblin's world, don't they?
Definitely.
This constant digging into impermanence, the huge, often missed impact of our own perspective, the absolute need to question things, and this deep feeling of connection he saw between art and life, all part of this bigger journey of self-discovery.
Absolutely. And his artistic language is just so distinctive. This mix of abstraction, rich symbols, those sneaky hidden meanings, all intentionally designed, it feels like, to pull the viewer into that very personal process of finding meaning.
And you just can't ignore that fiercely independent spirit, that really unconventional path he carved out for himself as an artist, always playing by his own rules, it seems.
Indeed. He wasn't afraid to push back against conventions, mess with expectations, and just follow his own creative gut feeling wherever it took him, even if that meant leaving the established art world behind.
So, for you, our listener, after digging into Bob Camblin's world, I'm curious what parts of his vision connect most with you? How do his ideas about art, about questioning reality, about that search for meaning, how do they resonate with your own experiences?
Yeah, we'd really encourage you to maybe go back to those sources, or even better, try and find some images of Campbell's actual work online or somewhere.
Mm.
Look at them again with this context in mind. See what new layers jump out at you now.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. In a world that often seems to want clear answers, definite truths, what's the power in embracing ambiguity? In living with the unresolved questions, the hidden meanings that artists like Bob Camblin invite us to explore.
Mhm.
Maybe the real enlightenment isn't finding all the answers, but maybe it's in the journey itself, the ongoing, always changing process of actually seeking them.